Now, apart from the central nervous system, we have the peripheral nervous system, which is basically the nerves and the ganglia. Once the spinal cord has been finished, we are done with the spinal cord, the structure of the spinal cord. We're moving on to the nerves that are spreading throughout our body, and they're basically taking the signals from the effector organs towards the central nervous system and back again from the central nervous system towards the effector organs, the commands are being carried out. So how does it happen? It happens through the coordination of the peripheral nervous system. Mainly we have the ganglia. So we have a sympathetic ganglia. A chain is present laterally to the spinal cord, and they are known as the ganglion. And then we have a network of peripheral nerves that are present throughout the body, taking sensations back for the further coordination and then sending messages to the effector organs as well. So this is the complete set of the nerves that are present or that are spreading throughout our body. Now, the autonomic nervous system is mainly the comprising of the parasympathetics, and then we have the sympathetics. When the sympathetics, they come into action, as I've already emphasized on the facts, it's the fright and flight phenomena, the emergency situation that is being created. And what happens is there is a dilatation of the pupils, the inhibition of the saliva, the acceleration of the heartbeat, relating to tachypnea that rises, the dilatation of the bronchi, inhibition of the digestion in the stomach. Mainly the liver is stimulated for the glucose release, and the kidneys are stimulated for the release of the epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are again the emergency hormones. The intestines, they are inhibited, their peristalsis is halted all in all, and there is a relaxation of the bladder. Now all the commands are being basically carried out through the sympathetic chain, the ganglia that are present laterally to the spinal cord, and this happens through this chain of the ganglia that is present. Then we have the parasympathetics. Now, usually the parasympathetic stimulation takes place through the vagus nerve, and it is basically the 10th cranial nerve that is involved over here, which basically slows down the heartbeat. The lungs are constricted, the bronchi are constricted. The stimulation of digestion takes place. There is a stimulation of the bile release. The intestines are stimulated. The peristalsis is promoted in the individual. And the contraction of the bladder takes place directly from the sacral plexus. Then we have the salivary glands that are being stimulated directly through a ganglion, and it basically causes the excessive salivation, and the constriction of the pupils also takes place through the parasympathetic stimulation. Now, the basic or the major portion of the parasympathetic stimulation, it takes place through the 10th cranial nerve, and it basically, all of this is under the control of the vagal stimulation, or which is also known, again, the vagal inhibition has its own characteristics, and we have a vagal stimulation as well. So this is the complete set of different stimulations that can take place in an individual in different situations, and the different neurons at different levels, they come into action for the activation of this autonomic nervous system to take place. Now, regarding the somatic nervous system, we have the upper motor neurons in the primary motor cortex. So this is the exact location of the primary motor cortex that is just present. This is the central sulcus, and it is just present anterior to the central sulcus. This is the primary motor cortex, and the messages are being sent to the spinal cord. And there is the second order neuron that explains messages to the final effector organs. So it can be some sort of a pathology that takes place with the upper motor neurons, and we refer to this pathology as an upper motor neuron lesion whenever there is some sort of a problem with this signaling pathway, that is the red portion that is being shown over here. When the messages are being transmitted to the anterior gray horn. Then we have the somatic motor nuclei of the brain stem, And even this is being shown over here, and these are known as the lower motor neurons, which are basically carrying the messages from the spinal cord to the skeletal muscles. So it can be basically either the upper motor neuron lesion, or it can be even a lower motor neuron lesion, and there are particularly different set of clinical pictures that are being presented in the upper and the lower motor neuron lesion particularly. Thereafter, we have the spinal cord as well, as you can even review. This is the spinal cord over here. So it can be any lesion that is happening over here in the spinal cord, and can basically affect the upper motor neuron lesion as well. We can have a somatic motor nuclei of the spinal cord that is located in the interior, or it can be even located in the posterior gray horn. The skeletal muscles, as even shown over here, and obviously the messages are not being conveyed to whenever there is some sort of a problem with the lower motor neurons. Either it is pathological, or either it is traumatic in its nature. So again, we are going to basically correlate clinically, but the basic knowledge of the neuroanatomy is needed whenever you see a patient and he or she is not able to perform the voluntary actions. We look at the facts whether we are dealing with a lower motor neuron lesion, or either it is an upper motor neuron lesion that we're looking at in particularly.